Hello and welcome to Dick and Cherry Show number 4. Psilocybin, Leggo My Ego, TM. That is the working title. However, we will be discussing shrooms at large, both magic and the fly agaric, the two most frequently found types, with our resident fun guy, Dr. Random Cam. Welcome to the Dick and Cherry Show.
Hello, yes, that is definitely me. I know it's just a badger face, but see, it's my voice. No one can do my voice. It's too weird a voice to do.
That is accurate. That is accurate. It is not Allison doing some necromancy or marionette puppetry. It is indeed Dr. Random Cam on the Dick and Cherry.
Or maybe it's the codger impersonating Dr. Random Cam.
Oh, now that's a twist.
He is tricksy like that.
So meta.
Very accurate. Well, we have a topic that is a little topical. It's a little, recent events inspired somewhat. It has a bit of a sort of timely feel to it because of recent rumblings around the YouTubes that involve our community, that is the feminist, anti-feminist, the skeptic, the SJW, anti-SJW sort of world of YouTube and the YouTubers that participate in it. There's been some rumblings about a recent fairly tragic event, I would say, a shooting of a loved one by a person. And the thing that bothers me about the narrative is the very frequent he took mushrooms and had a PTSD episode. That's what led to it narrative, which bothers me as a scientist very much, because everything I know about psilocybin mushrooms, anyway, also known as magic mushrooms, is quite antithesis to inciting a PTSD episode or even a psychotic break. In fact, the reason to take them is to alleviate such instances. So it has been repeated enough times that I kind of would like to set the record straight and look into psilocybin and mushrooms in general and see how does it correlate to psychosis or PTSD, or what do people experience on it? What is this thing all about? Because we keep hearing a lot of this mushrooms plus PTSD. That's all you need to know. Case closed. That seems to be kind of the only explanation people need for this tragic event. And the scientist in me is raging, is full of salt, is very mad. So I'd like to set the record straight on that. And I do understand the desire to be compassionate towards the perpetrator of the shooting, and it happens to be a male in this case. And so a lot of people are really eager to be understanding and compassionate and sort of say, look, we have a mental illness issue, we have a PTSD problem, perhaps from a former veteran, and he took mushrooms. That's all you need to know. And once again, that's possibly not true at all. And there's a lot of hearsay, and it just kind of bothers me that so many YouTube voices in our sphere have repeated the mushrooms plus PTSD idea. And let's talk about it.
If you're listening to this after the live show and you want to hear the full stream, go to www.honeybadgerradio.com for our unabridged podcasts, or look up to the right of this video. There's a link to go directly to the unabridged version on YouTube.
It's difficult to say that any flavor of psychotic episode never happens on a particular kind of mushroom, particularly when the internet's here and showing you all kind of videos of weird shit. I've seen the odd video where someone's shouting incoherently and going so crazy that someone has to sort of kneel down on them for a long time until they calm down. But very rarely is there any confirming evidence in the video that it's actually mushrooms that's happening, or if there's any particular drug happening. It's usually some kind of hearsay involved with that. So I have to compare that with the experience I've had and the experience I've seen other people have. I don't have any degrees in psychology or biochemistry or anything, but this is one of the things I used to do quite a lot, and it's something you do occasionally with friends who don't do them very often, because it's one of those drugs that's not an unnatural chemical. It's not gonna fuck up your organs or anything.
And it's not really
it's something that non-drug takers take once, assuming it's going to be one of the softer drugs, and it's not. But I've never known it to cause violence. I've never known it to cause anything resembling rage. Lots of sickness. Most of the time people feel very sick And
Maybe
for a long time.
gastrointestinal violence, but
Yeah, and a lot of the time, people get very smiley and laughy for a while, and then they look at things and find them crazy.
Oh yeah, especially the first time.
And obviously, there's the paranoia thing. People discover the fine line between empathy and paranoia, and you have to keep reminding them that they're not annoying everyone, and no, everyone doesn't hate them. And there's stuff like there's bad trips and stuff, and I won't lie, it gets very dark from inside it. But like I say, never seen anything resembling violence. I've been in conditions where I didn't know where I was. They can induce amnesia if you take what McKenna calls a heroic dose. But like I say, never. Yeah, which I suppose could, if it happens to coincide with a PTSD episode, if you effectively get amnesia, you don't know where you are, and something very strange is going on. Maybe it could trigger something. But if you're at risk of that, then you shouldn't be taking such things.
Whenever they study the negative effects of schizophrenia, the paranoia, the delusions, the brain damage, they in animal models, so to find out what it does to the human brain or what this disease manifests like, they give animals PCP specifically, not mushrooms, not acid, not anything else. PCP specifically for the negative effects of schizophrenia.
Yeah,
so,
and in the more clinical terms, I mean, whereas you're using it more in the common parlance, and when they talk about positive and negative effects of schizophrenia, they're talking specifically about loss of cognition or added to cognition. So, like for instance, with LSD and studies like that, they see that there is the positive effects of schizophrenia. In other words, there are things added to cognition, but there is not the loss of abilities that occurs with, like PCP, where there's the loss of the ability to determine, what is, a really stupid idea, and and what is actually, just something that you're kind of thinking about, and it's just how you can think about crazy shit, you do it every day, but then you kind of just disregard it because you're having a fun little fantasy thought, what if sort of thing, and that's because you still have your other faculties as well. And so that's kind of the difference there, is that when it's removing faculties, that's the negative effects of schizophrenia that schizophrenics sometimes do actually have as well, where they start to lose cognition because of certain parts of the brain being turned off or being burned out, etc.
Once again, violence is not really a thing that happens, though. You are sort of incapacitated in a way, and just like when people are high on cannabis, this whole idea of somebody got high and killed their family with a hatchet is just so laughable, because once you've experienced cannabis or been around people who are on it, it is physically like relaxing. People talk about being melted into the couch. Like you don't really feel like getting up and murdering people and being even active. You sometimes don't even want to leave the house unless you're hungry.
But people believe that shit when they were printing those stories about marijuana. Another reefer fiend, axe murders his family. News at 11. They literally had these things in the newspapers, and people used to believe that shit. I mean, it was just lies, and I don't even know if it was intentional lies all the time, or if it was just kind of rumors getting started and people just spreading rumors, which that's probably even more likely than just straight up lying. If you've never done psilocybin and you're hearing these stories, like, okay, sometimes people have these, really bad experiences, why would anyone do them? And I think that's a question I would like to hear. What does he usually get from people? Why they try this? What is the, what's the reasoning behind doing it? What do people get out of it, just kind of from a general experience sort of view?
Well, it's a little bit like extreme sports, like bungee jumping or jumping out of a plane, like Brian's planning to do. There's a chance something could go wrong, and you could be killed or paralyzed. And I sort of make that same argument, but at least the furthest you'll fall on mushrooms is towards the floor. It's some people have a very adventurous body; they don't mind risking a few broken bones, and some people have a very adventurous brain; they don't mind risking a trauma here or there, particularly if you're already a seasoned drug user. If you've now, I say if you smoked a lot of weed, but it's many times stranger than any weed folks. Weed won't prepare you for mushrooms. This is
true.
another reason it's so strange that first-time drug users think, "Oh, I'll just take mushrooms. That'll ease me into it." No, please.
For the love of God, no, that's nothing at all the same.
It's I've met people who've been taking like speed and pills for years, and they've never taken mushrooms. And then I give them mushrooms, and it just blows their mind. Like, holy shit, I've never experienced anything.
Yeah, well,
it's like a completely another level. Fly agarics don't do any of that. As far as I know, anyway, I've tried fly agarics. They're legal to buy dried off the internet, whereas psilocybins have been illegal since 2005.
Oh, that's ridiculous, because fly agaric specifically I don't know if Jerry already mentioned this, but it's specifically used in laboratory settings to cause brain lesions. That's how, whenever you want to cause brain lesions, you use the chemical from fly agaric to cause them in animals, so you can study brain damage.
Oh, not just that. Not just that, but fly agaric, sure, there's that chemical that you're talking about, which can induce does induce brain lesions. Also has toxicity, poisoning type of deaths, coma, all the good stuff. But in fact, when you take the mushroom itself, not the compound I just described and what it does, but the mushroom itself, fly agaric, it has seemingly large amounts of mannitol, I think it was. So it actually crosses the blood-brain barrier super extra fucking quick. So eating specifically the mushrooms, fly agaric, is way worse than taking the pure fly agaric chemical itself. So that's
apparently they're particularly poisonous when they're fresh. Something about when they're dried, they're not quite as bad. I don't know why that would work. But yeah, they happily sell it to people on the internet. And I tried, I think it was 25 grams dried, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to eat. Very nearly threw up just trying to eat it. And all it did was make me tidy my room incredibly quickly, which I suppose relates to Viking berserkers.
Right, yeah.
Certainly didn't see any visions or experience any sort of trippiness. Just sort of, I have to tidy my room now really fast.
If there was a mushroom which would induce PTSD and psychosis, it would probably not be the drug, which is known as novel psychopharmacological therapies for psychiatric disorders. Psilocybin is used for treatment of unipolar mood disorders. There's more psilocybin and psychedelics being used to treat mood disorders, psychiatric disorders. That's psilocybin. Amanita muscaria is prolonged psychosis after injection. Okay, so if there was any drug that would help PTSD, it would be psilocybin, and on which violence would not occur. And if there was a drug that would induce psychosis, it would be Amanita muscaria, in terms of the two.
Yeah, you take enough of it, you're going to get, the brain lesions from the ibotenic acid. So it's like,
This actual study, though, I mean, this is on the 6th day, all symptoms of psychosis gradually disappeared. On the 6th day. And this was a man who, I think unintentionally ingested Amanita muscaria. And it was a 5-day paranoid psychosis that a 40-year-old man took no previous medical history, gathered and ate mushrooms he presumed to be this other kind, but half an hour later he started to vomit, fell asleep, was found comatose, having a seizure-like episode. On admission, he was comatose some more, so that whole coma thing, that's fun. And then for 5 days after that, he was, fucked up. So that's cool. But what they also talk about in terms of a potential historical reference to Amanita muscaria is the idea is that the Viking berserkers, the warriors, they actually used a Amanita muscaria concoction. They would grind up the mushrooms, and there's also a potential side note of using urine in order to extract the finer compounds out of this concoction. But they would, the short story is they would use Amanita muscaria, fly agaric mushrooms to amp themselves up before battle. And the idea is that these mushrooms would, and yes, they did vomit, but afterwards they felt great, and they would be foaming at the mouths, something that potentially is associated with taking fly agaric. And they would see visions that would inspire them to get aggressive, and they would actually see or feel themselves as animals. And so it would be not uncommon. That's actually why they think they would wear furs of certain animals, is that was their fursona. They kind of felt under the influence of agaric, they represented a fierce bear or a wolf, and they would sort of embody these animals and run around like them some, and fucking just cause mayhem and havoc and utter fear in their opponents. And that's kind of what supposedly Vikings did. They amped themselves up on agaric and got their fursonas on, and also they felt kind of invincible a little bit, perhaps is the idea, which is why they didn't really bother to wear armor, because they were just kind of wild and like, I feel like an animal, give me a skin, I don't need no armor, I'm gonna kick some ass. You have 5-HT2A, aka serotonin receptor, that is a problem in a lot of disorders, depression, psychosis, schizophrenia, whatever. It's too much of 5-HT2A. And so what we end up doing with mushroom psilocybin is activating the fuck out of it. So yeah, you might get super crazy, and we'll get back on that, back to our original topic on that. So you might get super crazy for that moment, but then afterwards, you'll actually have less of the crazy or sad-making receptors. On the other hand, what we end up seeing all too often currently is SSRIs, with the antidepressants currently that are peddled everywhere. SSRI stands for selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, meaning it does the exact opposite of what mushrooms do. And what Raul was just saying is that it lets you deal with the symptoms of like depression or craziness or whatever. But what you're doing is you're stopping up or blocking off these receptors, and your body produces more. So you're actually creating more of sad or crazy making a receptor, instead of activating it all at once and going through the, as we described, a harrowing sometimes experience of tripping. You, instead of doing that, you're just like, well, I just take some antidepressants and I'll feel better. And then people kill themselves when they go off antidepressants, because the whole thing is fucking up your system. It's not actually helping it. It is just dealing with the symptoms. So on that, I'd really like to come back to the PTSD mushrooms thing. So we basically boil down to that, okay, largely you're not going to get fucking violent when you are on experiencing hallucinogenic trip on psilocybin specifically. So what people know as mushrooms, shrooms, magic mushrooms, it is psilocybin. It is not only in our personal experience, physically for us ourselves is difficult to be in any way violent. We have also observed that in every person that we've encountered who's also tripping during their trip. And now I actually have a PubMed article that shows that mixed serotonin receptor agonist psilocybin reduces threat-induced modulation of amygdala connectivity. What that means is, I don't know if you guys recall, we talked about amygdala on Cherry Stone before. It is the fear and social learning area of the brain. It is the area that lights up like a Christmas tree when kids have been, for instance, abused, or, in general, there is a lot of stress or trauma in a person's life. Their amygdala will activate like crazy when kappa-opioids are present, which is fear, stress, all of that. So we have a study here that shows that stimulation of serotogenic neurotransmitters, so the 5-HT2A, et cetera, serotonin that we're talking about, the buttons, by psilocybin, has been shown to shift emotional biases away from negative towards positive stimuli. So it is literally reducing threat-induced modulation of amygdala connectivity. So what normally you would perceive as a threat, and you get really freaked out about it, and it sends you into overdrive, fight or flight, violence, etc. When you are under the effects of psilocybin, that serotonin activation diverts this process.